Welcome back, Honors Western Civ. Today was a fantastic day in class. We really got a good example of what Ray and Matt did of kind of where we want to go with these presentations and whatnot, and how the presentations in class are actually going to take us further into our content, and then our flips are going to kind of supplement the notes portion that we usually do in class. So kind of doing our homework in class and our classwork for homework, right? So today we're going to kind of continue on with how the Persian Wars led to this massive golden age known as the classical period in Greece. Now, this period lasted for several hundred years, but there's a couple of things to really take back from it as being particularly good. Now, some of y'all are probably wondering what's up with this like little thing right here, right? Don't really know what it is or what's going on. Well, it turns out that it's actually alive. Now, I know I give this dog a lot of crap, but she's actually really sweet. Josie? Josie? Yeah, can you look at the camera? Maybe? Right there? Huh? That's a good girl. So, she's not terrible. She's still just like a little puppy, so she just doesn't listen that well. But we're getting her there. Isn't that right, sweet girl? Yeah. Okay. Because Rufio's being a little bit of an antisocial, and he's upstairs. So, anyway, let's go ahead and go. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk, like, kind of use as an example of our classical period shenanigans is what building is that right there? Good job, Aaron. I see you back there, O'Callahan. That's the Parthenon, right? That's what's left of it anyway. So that was actually constructed during the classical period, but we're going to go ahead and be objective about the world around you. Now, this says cleaning up after the Persian Wars, okay? So now, results of the Persian Wars. Greece was now free from Persian rule, right? This little flower known as Western civilization finally started blossoming on its own, right? Now it was away from Persia, and this big split between the East and the West is just opening. That chasm of different cultural differences is just growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, right? So, free from Persian rule, the Greek city-states are also starting to form alliances. Now, unfortunately, these alliances are leading to rifts among the city-states because there are the more tribal nations like Sparta, and then there are the more fancy pants city-states, the more like organized and kind of scholarly city-states like Athens that are arising as well. So the Athenians had a naval fleet of over 200 ships. Now I want you to think about that in the grand scheme, right? 200 ships. The world had never seen one city-state amass a naval fleet that large. And we of course know that Athenians' navy was very, very strong, right? What did they hide on the ships up underneath? Anybody? Good job, Otrimsky. That's right, that battering ram underneath the water, right? The Athenians had like a phenomenally built boat. So now, an alliance of over 150 Greek city-states is going to start too, and it's going to be called the Delian League, okay? Now, the Delian League was made to protect from another Persian attack. Now, Athens, of course, was in charge of this, but they're going to kind of start up a little bit of a dicey thing when they tell everyone that's in the Delian League, now you're only allowed to have a democracy, okay? So now remember, we talked about the development of the Athenian democracy early on with Solon and archaic Greece and how like they formally used to vote. And it was very rudimentary at first, but it's really going to take shape during this time period. So now the cities also had to pay to be members, right? The dues then went to Athens, and Athens is going to use that money to rebuild their Acropolis and build walls around their city after the Persians burned it down. Now, the Spartans are going to get really upset about this because they're going to think that Athens is kind of favoring themselves over everyone else. And, of course, Sparta, being the varsity squad, doesn't really like it when the JV is just messing around, right? So Sparta did not join them out of distrust. Now, right here, you can see a map of the differences between Sparta and its allies and then the Delian League and its allies. Now, the Delian League has a massive, massive economical advantage. Why? Why does it look like the economy of the Delian leagues would prosper, whereas those of Sparta and its allies may fall? Good job, Kieran and Haley. I heard y'all. Right? So Athens is right here around the Mediterranean Sea, right? It's all the way over here around the Mediterranean Sea. And they can control the trade because they also dominate these large chains of islands. Whereas Sparta just juts out, and there was no one to the west of them during the time period to really trade with. The Romans were just kind of just starting to like blossom forth. The Etruscans were settling there. They were still a monarchy. Romulus hasn't stabbed Remus yet. We'll get to that later on, though. So very, very big economical advantage there for Athens. Now, By the way, go ahead and strap in because today is going to be a little long. Now, the worst thing that could possibly happen to Sparta happened too, right after all this. Sparta got hit by an earthquake, right? And their helots revolted at the same exact time. Now, remember, a helot is when the Spartans would conquer a group, and they are going to use the people that they conquered that were males became farmers for them. Sorry, I'm eating candy. But it became farmers for them called helots, and that's how they actually produced things, because all Spartan men had to grow up to be what, Josie? That's right, warriors, right? So, while the Athenians were... I can eat. You don't have to eat what I'm eating. All right, so anyway, now, while the Athenians were on their way, Sparta sent them back home because they didn't trust this new fancy-schmancy democracy. But so the Athenians literally offered help to Sparta and said, we will come and help you quell this helot revolt. And they said no, even though half of their city-state was destroyed by an earthquake. But now, Mr. Terry's number 3 favorite person of all of history, Pericles, right? Pericles is going to be the Athenian man that makes Athenian great. He's also going to lead to the First Peloponnesian War. We'll talk about that later on. But also, he completely reformed Athens. He created, basically by himself, he created classical Athens, right? Along with the philosophers and whatnot. So, let's talk about this real quick, okay? So, there was this guy, right? His name was Cimon, C-I-M-O-N. We're not going to be worried about that so much, but he was the original ruler of Athens at the time, but he wanted to take Athens away from a democracy and turn them into an oligarchy. Now, write this down real quick. Under the democracy of Athens, the leader was called an archon, all right? A-R-C-H-O-N, which means governor or general or leader, okay? So Cimon was the archon, C-I-M-O-N, and he wants to take us a step back, okay? He wants to go from democracy, and he wants to turn it into an oligarchy, right? She kind of just takes it and just lets me do whatever. So anyway, now an oligarchy is when a small group of wealthy are in charge, right? Kind of like an aristocracy, but an aristocracy is supposed to be noble families. Oh, good yawn. So Pericles is from a famous Athenian family. He says, hell no, right? And so he ostracizes Cimon. He literally has him removed and like kicked out of Athens in general, right? So, and after that, Pericles is going to be elected archon 29 years in a row. Whoa, right? Can't even believe it. Sorry, Josie. So, anyway, now it's for a lot of different reasons, though. So, he built walls around Athens and their naval bases. This is Pericles' accomplishments, right? He built walls around Athens and their naval bases, and the naval base. He had the Acropolis rebuilt with a brand new statue of Athena built out of ivory and gold and all this other really cool stuff. He reformed the government, right? And he learned from Solon and made a fair government, right? Now, his number one thing, also he had, of course, the Parthenon reconstructed. Pericles also created pay for government workers, like we just talked about, equal elections, right? Free theater seats for the poor. He actually brought the poor into the theater of Athens and said, you belong here. You should be here with us. Amazing, amazing stuff. He was an equality guy. He didn't think that people had to be lower than anybody else or be able to... He didn't feel that anyone had to be refused something great that Athens had to offer, right? He also made more fair citizenship laws. I'm not going to get into what those laws were, but just that's all you need to worry about is that the citizenship laws were more fair. Okay, so now right here, that is the still standing theater in Athens. Okay, so it's an amphitheater, right? And so the acoustics on it are very, very, very good. Now, and then right here, these are always I thought were really cool. These are Athenian masks that theater actors would actually use to act with, right? So very, very interesting, very cool stuff. So this was because you couldn't show emotion very well on your face from a distance, so they would use these large stone masks. And then this gave way to the common symbol of the theater, where if you walk by the band room or the theater arts department, you see the two masks, the happy one and the sad one. Where do you think it comes from, right? It comes from ancient Greece. We'll talk about that later on. But really quick, let's talk about life in Athens before I waste all y'all's time this evening. The Athenians lived with very few things, okay? Athenians outside the city kept animals for milk, meat, etc. The most common animal that you would see in Athens is a goat, right? Like goats were more often than not used for meat, used to make milk, used to make a lot of different stuff, right? So they were actually also, unfortunately, sometimes used as sacrifice, but whatever. So it was very common, too, for a middle-class Athenian family to have a goat in their courtyard at all times to use it, right? So anyway, now this is what I find really cool. This is the construction of a common Athenian household, right? So right here, you would actually walk into the entrance into a courtyard that had an altar to your family's patron god or goddess. What I want you to do along with this, okay, come in tomorrow. Tell me if you could pick one god or goddess for your family. Tell me which one you would pick, all right? Write that down in your notes real quick, and then bring that in, and that's going to be the number 6 Wusa question. Let's see how many of y'all are really paying attention, right? So, also, the storerooms would be over here, kind of like a pantry, and then a living room, another storeroom, a dining room. Cool thing about Greece and their dining rooms, they didn't use tables or chairs. They actually lounged while they dined. They would actually kick back and be laying down, and, right? So cool. They had lentils, figs, and grapes, along with meat if they were lucky, once every few days, right? So this... I mean, that's annoying, but that's just how it was. Like Americans, we are larger usually outright because we eat so much more protein than other countries do in this world. So the Athenian economy, most men. This is very important. You need to kind of circle this because we've got to be able to talk about how men other places made money. Because Spartan men, of course, are you going to sleep on me? Spartan men, of course, they made their money by soldiering, but the government provided everything they needed. So most men, however, in the Athenian economy, they were craft workers, right? They had some kind of trade that they were really, really good at. Now, excuse me, worked with their hands, and slaves were commonplace in Athens as well. So now we're going to talk about that tomorrow a little bit. We got to get into my guys, right? There are 3 big philosophers, okay? Now, classical Greece was the birth of philosophy. So philosophy means love of wisdom. I myself feel like I'm a philosopher because I love being smart. I like to try and learn a little something every single day, right? So the philosophers are going to be the first ones to turn away from the myths that we're talking about in class, and they want to try and use logic to explain the world, right? So the big 3. First one, Socrates, born poor. He wrote nothing down, kind of like Homer, right? Ironically enough. Taught for free in the Agora. Very, very cool. Thought that everyone deserved a chance to be intelligent. Asked question like, what's the meaning of life? And is perfection possible? And I want you to really kind of step back a little bit, maybe while you're eating supper tonight, and be like, what do you think the meaning of life is? Personally, I think it's just for living. Live it to the best, right? And then, is perfect ever possible? Is anything ever perfect? But if we understand that nothing is perfect, then do we stop striving for perfect? Like, right? It's all these questions that can never really quite be answered. And a lot of it kind of makes you look inside yourself and ask the question of yourself, can I ever be perfect, but do I ever stop striving for perfection? What is the meaning of my life to me? How important is life to me? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, he came up with this really cool thing called the Socratic method. Now, the Socratic method is doing nothing but asking people questions until they realize how stupid they are, right? So if you do this to your parents, be nice about it, all right? And realize that sometimes you just do what they say because they tell you to, okay? So now, the big 3, Plato. Born to a wealthy family. This is the second one. He is the student of Socrates, right? He believed in the idea of a utopia or a perfect society is what we should strive for, but we may never actually reach it because he believes that all people are born evil yet simply taught to be good, right? Because honestly, I kind of agree with him. You know, like if there's like a handful of sesame seeds and I'm about to die and starve and Simon's the one making them, I might kill Simon for those sesame seeds. It just might happen, right? So it's just... You okay? All right, so that's just one of those things, right? So anyway, very, very important philosopher. So, and then the last one, of course, is Aristotle, student of Plato, believed in moderation. He's like the happy medium between the two. If the 3 philosophers were buffalo wings, right, and there's like spicy, medium, and mild, Aristotle's the medium, mild is Plato, and spicy is Socrates, right? So he's the medium right here. He believes that everything in moderation, egos, logos, pathos, the idea of using logic, ethics, trustworthiness, sympathy, and that if you do everything in moderation, nothing's ever bad, right? I think that's so cool. So we're going to talk about the impact of philosophers tomorrow. Y'all can figure that out. But we're going to stop here for tonight. Can you say bye, Josie? This is Mr. Terry signing off. We'll talk about this stuff more tomorrow when we talk about some more myths and maybe some javelin throwing and some pancreatron, okay? So look forward to seeing y'all then. Have a good one.